Welcome back. This chapter we're going to talk about the eyeball anatomy, and this is going to be a diagram of the horizontal view of the right eyeball. And to start with, at the front is the cornea, and that is continuous with the sclera, and these are both made up of very strong collagen, and the sclera is basically what we see as the white part of our eyes, and when we see the colour of our eyes, that is what we call the iris. And behind the iris is the ciliary body, which has suspensory ligaments that attach to the lens, and it changes the lens's shape in order to focus. And the most inner layer is the retina. This starts at the ora serrata. The retina is full of rods and cone cells, which is what gives us colour vision, and it is the most concentrated at the fovea, and we need that to give us the highest visual acuity. And so these photoreceptor cells then transmit signals to the brain via the optic nerve, and so that allows us to see the image that we see. So in the middle here we can see the vitreous humour, which makes up the vitreous body, and in front of the lens is the anterior and posterior chambers, which contain aqueous humour. So to be able to see, we need two things. We need a clear media that allows light to travel through from the front of the eye to the retina at the back of the eye. And we need phototransduction, which is the conversion of light energy to electricity, and that happens in the retina, optic nerve, and the brain. And so when someone has blurred vision or vision loss, it could be caused by the clouding of the cornea, aqueous humour, lens, i.e. a cataract, or vitreous humour, like a vitreous hemorrhage, for example. Or it could be a phototransduction problem, such as an optic neuropathy, glaucoma, or it could be a brain tumour or stroke. So anyway, back to the anatomy of the eyeball. It is split into the anterior and posterior segment, and the anterior segment goes from the anterior of the eye all the way to and including the posterior chamber. And the posterior segment includes the posterior structures like the lens and the vitreous humour. And you can see the three layers of the eyeball, from the outside sclera to the choroid and the retina. And the vitreous body is enveloped by a thin transparent membrane called the hyaloid membrane. And here in purple is the conjunctiva, and the junction between the conjunctiva and the cornea is called the circumciliary. And on either side of the eyeball you can see the medial and lateral rectus, which turns the eye medially and laterally respectively. So now looking at the cornea in more detail, there are 6 layers in the cornea, and most anteriorly we start with the tear film and then the corneal epithelium, which consists of 5 layers of cells. So when we examine the eye under the slit lamp using fluorescein stain, for example if we're looking at a corneal ulcer, which is a defect in the corneal epithelium, or any abrasions essentially, will be stained green because the fluorescein will stain the basement membrane underneath the epithelium, and the basement membrane takes up the stain really well because it's collagen rich. So underneath the basement membrane is the stromal layer, followed by the Dewars layer and the Descemet's membrane. Lastly is the endothelium, which contains a pump that pumps out tears from the stroma. And now we'll zoom in on this area around the ciliary body. Here we can see a zoomed in version of the cornea, which is continuous with the sclera, and the episclera, which is a very thin layer just anterior to the sclera, and it contains the Schlemm's canal and trabecular meshwork, and these structures drain the aqueous humour from the eye. And here is the ciliary body, which contains the ciliary epithelium and the ciliary muscle. The ciliary epithelium is what produces the aqueous humour. The aqueous humour flows through the posterior chamber and then to the anterior chamber and is drained via the trabecular meshwork and the Schlemm's canal into episcleral blood vessels. And the ciliary muscle is what controls the shape of the lens. So the ciliary body is attached to the lens via zonules, and when the ciliary muscle contracts or relaxes, that changes the shape of the lens and helps us focus on things that are further or close to us. The angle formed by the sclera and the ciliary body is called the iridocorneal angle, and this is often decreased in acute angle closure glaucoma, which will be covered in another video.